What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for NFL Week 3 Sleeper Picks.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to give you some of my top DFS Sleeper Picks,
Super low priced and low ownership players that could crush value this week and give your lineup an advantage over the field. These are risky plays, meant for large tournaments only. Don't go all in on any of these guys. They are high risk, high reward picks. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made.
Oh, and good news, guys. Make sure to stay tuned to the very end of this video because we removed the box that was popping up and blocking the lineup. So now you can see a full lineup using these picks that we made in this video if you stay to the very end. Okay, guys, NFL Week 3. Let's take a look at the quarterback position. My sleeper pick at the quarterback position is Matt Ryan from the Atlanta Falcons playing the New York Giants, who have the 7th worst defense overall and they're middle of the pack defending opposing quarterbacks. Matt Ryan has averaged 14.8 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 2 rush attempts per game. Now, he's only going to be about 3% owned, projected at 17.3 fantasy points here in Week 3, and he's only $5,400 DraftKings salary and $1,700 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 47.5 points scored in this game, with the Atlanta Falcons trailing by 3. So you got a decent matchup here and a close competitive game where the Atlanta Falcons could fall behind in this one, could be a passing game script, and Matt Ryan scored 22 fantasy points last week. I think he's going to go for 20 plus fantasy points at only $5,400 DraftKings salary. I think that's a good play if you want to stack the rest of your positions. So I like Matt Ryan here versus the New York Giants. And the other sleeper pick at the quarterback position is Jared Goff from the Detroit Lions playing the Baltimore Ravens, who have the worst defense overall, and they give up the 4th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Jared Goff has averaged 26.7 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 3.5 rush attempts per game, and he's only going to be about 3% owned, projected at 16.6 fantasy points here in Week 3. He's only $5,200 FanDuel salary, $1,900 more on FanDuel, and Vegas thinks there's going to be 50.5 points scored in this game, with the Detroit Lions trailing by 7.5. So he's got a great matchup, a high-scoring game. Now, his projection is a little bit less than Matt Ryan. I think he can hit the 20 fantasy point mark, but I think I would prefer Matt Ryan over Jared Goff. Although Jared Goff has got more going for him this week on paper, a higher scoring game, a better matchup, should be a passing game script as the Lions fall behind the Baltimore Ravens. And Jared Goff did score 20 fantasy points in Week 2 and 33 fantasy points in Week 1.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching.
If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal,
all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won.
And we'll send you $25 PayPal.
So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Now, is Jared Goff going to come back down to earth here in Week 3? He definitely might. That's why I prefer Matt Ryan as a sleeper pick. But I think you got to consider this guy based on his performance so far this year. So I like Jared Goff here versus the Baltimore Ravens. Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. My sleeper pick at the running back position is David Montgomery from the Chicago Bears playing the Cleveland Browns, who have a middle of the pack defense overall, And although they've been pretty good versus opposing running backs, David Montgomery, he's averaged 16.4 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 18 rush attempts per game and 2.5 pass targets per game. So he's averaging over 20 touches per game. That's what you want to see in your fantasy running back. And he's only going to be about 1% owned, projected at 15 fantasy points here in week 3. He's 6,100 DraftKings salary, 800 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 44.5 points scored in this game, with the Bears trailing by 7.5. So the matchup isn't great. It's not really a high-scoring game, and he is at risk of this turning into a passing game script if the Bears fall behind the Browns. But if you throw all of that to the side and look at his performance so far this year, I like getting 20 plus touches a game at 1% ownership at only 6,100 DraftKings salary and 800 more on FanDuel. The price and the ownership is right on both sites, so I like David Montgomery here versus the Cleveland Browns. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver position. One of my sleeper picks here at the wide receiver position is Julio Jones from the Tennessee Titans playing the Indianapolis Colts, who have the 9th worst defense overall, and they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Julio Jones has averaged 13.9 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 7 pass targets per game, and he's on the field for 76% of the snaps, and he's only going to be about 3% owned.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Projected at 15.1 fantasy points here in week 3. He's 6,500 DraftKings salary and 200 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 47.5 points scored in this game, with the Tennessee Titans favored by 6. So you got a great matchup here, and a guy who scored 22 fantasy points last week at only 3% ownership. I think the price is still pretty low on Julio Jones, so I like Julio Jones here versus the Indianapolis Colts. Okay, another sleeper pick that I like at the wide receiver position is Michael Pittman Jr. from the Indianapolis Colts playing the Tennessee Titans, who have the 2nd worst defense overall, and they give up the absolute most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Michael Pittman Jr. has averaged 14.6 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 8 pass targets per game. He's on the field for 94% of the snaps. He's only going to be about 3% owned. He scored 23 fantasy points last week off of 12 pass targets. He's projected at 13.2 fantasy points here in week 3. He's only 5,500 DraftKings salary, 100 more on FanDuel. We know Vegas thinks there's going to be 47.5 points scored in this game, with the Colts trailing by 6. So you got a fantastic matchup, a passing game script, and a target monster. So I like Michael Pittman Jr. here versus the Tennessee Titans. Okay, moving on to the tight end position. So this was a hard position to find a sleeper pick because most of the plays here were about 5 to 6, 7, 8% owned. But if you get down to the 1% ownership guys, the guy that kind of stuck out to me was Logan Thomas from the Washington football team playing the Buffalo Bills, who have a good defense overall. They're middle of the pack defending opposing tight ends. Logan Thomas has averaged 10.8 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 5 pass targets per game. And take a look at this. He's been on the field for 100% of the snaps, and he's only going to be about 1% owned. Projected at 11.5 fantasy points here in week 3. He's 4,700 DraftKings salary, 1,000 more on FanDuel, and Vegas thinks there's going to be 45.5 points scored in this game, with the Washington football team trailing by 7.5. So you got a passing game script and a guy that's going to be on the field for 100% of the snaps, and he scored double-digit fantasy points in week 1 and in week 2 at 1% ownership. I think this is my favorite sleeper pick on the slate, so I like Logan Thomas here versus the Buffalo Bills.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.